John, Jad, KubeCon 2026 is underway. We're kicking things off from the canals of Amsterdam. It's Virtually Speaking podcast.
Welcome to KubeCon 2026 here in Amsterdam on the canals. Today with me, we've got John Nicholson.
Happy to be here. I've been thinking about, we've got this boat, but do we have a backup boat?
I don't think we do.
Do we have a plan for migrating to that backup boat? Do we have plans for disaster recovery of this boat? We got to think about our strategy for all these capabilities.
All right, so with us today, we also have Dilpreet Bindra, who is no stranger to Virtually Speaking. Dilpreet.
Hey, nice to be here.
Dilpreet, you've made some announcements this morning. You want to break some of that down, things that are top of mind, things that are most exciting?
Yeah, well, the beauty of being at KubeCon is that you get to start, this is the time you get to talk about the community and how amazing the CNCF community is overall, their overall stewardship and governance, and the great playground that we get to participate in, along with a bunch of other companies and individuals that allows, Kubernetes to rise the way it has. And so, we are looking at our overall portfolio, as I mentioned in the previous blog in Atlanta, we have particular areas we want to go in and focus on specifically around how to make Kubernetes an easier platform to manage and operate, and also debug, and how do we get the reliability in that platform, the overall availability of that platform to be at par. One of the things that we talked that I mentioned in my blog today is that, and I'm really, really proud of this, is that we were able to contribute Velero, which has been driven by VMware and then Broadcom for a number of years, over to the CNCF as a CNCF sandbox project, which is I'm pretty stoked about, and again highlights the stewardship and governance that CNCF provides for us. Okay,
so walk me through, what are the phases? So you first go to the sandbox, then you graduate beyond that?
Yes, I think there's a set of phases. I'm not the expert on all those phases, but the sandbox is the first step in being able to essentially then contribute further and then have the community essentially take over.
Have shared governance models. Yeah. There's something I've always heard, kind of some cynical take some people have about when companies are open sourcing something. So yes, it's good giving to the community, but sometimes it's like, oh, they're just going to dump this on there and they're going to abandon it or not do anything. Like, how does this process go to, and what are we doing to not do that?
The funny part is it's the opposite, absolutely the opposite. Velero is so critical to our future plans. It is at the heart of all of our disaster recovery, plans around one, backup restore, also migrations, but then how do we actually get an aligned DR story for our entire platform? So it is critical to our the set of things that we're doing down the road with not doing currently, but also down the road with VKS and the overall VCF automation stack.
So it's good to see there's some other big names. I've seen Microsoft and IBM and other traditional enterprise and cloud companies contributing to this. So it looks like others are building along with us on what we helped start.
And we proposed it, and there was such a resounding support from the Velero contributors. There's a vote that has to be taken by all the contributors of Velero, and there was this resounding support from all the companies that play in that sandbox. And it's pretty cool that we were able to not only do this and do it so quickly. That's what I'm impressed by. Everybody, it's clear that everybody in the community thought this was the best possible idea. I wonder why we took so long.
And so beyond Velero, also there's a lot of excitement over or history also around CAPI, etcd, and some others. Can you just walk through some of the other big projects that are in focus for us?
Yeah, again, as you look to operationalize Kubernetes, it is impossible not to touch some of these pieces. CAPI, which we've been involved in for a very, very long time, from the first Project Pacific activity. Frankly, we had to actually move fast during the Project Pacific timeframe, and we did certain things downstream and then spent a long time getting it back upstream to be able to then contribute back some of those improvements. But CAPI is at the heart of all your LCM of your cluster. And if you're really trying to do Kubernetes at scale, you have to solve the LCM problem, which frankly, in a lot of distributions, is still a significant problem, right?
Well, and if your lifecycle tooling is all stuff that you're forking downstream or doing your own proprietary work, it feels like you're just going to be stuck in a never-ending catch-up game. And this is explaining other conversations that I've had with people where they're like, yeah, one of VKS's VMware's Kubernetes Service's strengths is that we're able to adopt those new releases so quickly. It makes sense that that strategy has to come together.
I think that's one of the benefits of us, having CAPI to begin with. And frankly, learning from some of the other distros that were already there and mainstays is that we were able to take something upstream, enhance it, build it up, and we're continuing to do so. And now when any new capability of Kubernetes comes out, we're able to pick up the new version of Kubernetes almost instantaneously. Like it doesn't require a ton of work to get. If we were to do something downstream, it would have been a ton of work to be able to get those that downstream LCM to now support the new Kubernetes bits.
And I think 57 days is our internal SLA for picking up new Kubernetes releases in VKS. So yeah, I mean, we can see how some of this work compounds to become, or to allow us to take advantage of these types of things. Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay, so I know I had my cynical hat on earlier when I was asking you questions of, why are we open sourcing this? But it sounds like some of the evil plan here is, not only does this benefit, Broadcom, but also this benefits the community in terms of, and the commitment is there. This isn't just, a passing, boat, that we're bumping against, but something we're committed to.
No, absolutely. I think if anything, our commitment's been doubled down as part of Broadcom. So it's pretty cool to see the set of changes that we're making and the set of things we're able to do, and I'm looking forward to doing more.
Not to mention the benefits back to Broadcom when the community at large starts contributing to this code, and we could all enjoy it together. So let's move to etcd for a second. Why? I'm going to say this. I think I know your answer, but why is VMware contributing to etcd, and why is it so important to us?
Again, when you're talking about a clustered system, and you're talking about the availability that you need from a clustered system, the heart of it is the database, and so etcd has is the clustered database that drives Kubernetes. And frankly, all of the reliability of Kubernetes hinges on etcd, and can it actually maintain an overall reliable, and consistent data for Kubernetes to operate on. And so that's why it's so critical. I think last time in Atlanta when we were announcing a set of debugging tools for it, frankly, I just heard from one of our support guys, the support guy for us, and he said his brother was saying they used it in some other distribution and it worked great. And so contributing back some of these capabilities to debug etcd is already coming back to us and saying, hey, this has been great for the community at large.
It's good to see the operational toolings out there. It's getting used by others. This is something that, particularly when you're facing availability challenges, I feel like it's us all against, fire, flood, blood, whatever the causes of downtime are.
Yes.
And making sure your management plane doesn't go dark is always something that's important.
Yeah, and as Kubernetes is continually maturing, this is the real focus. If you talk about those three areas that we just mentioned, that's the focus of the maturing of Kubernetes. Like if you have enterprises, which they do today, rely on Kubernetes so heavily for their application stack, you need to shore up these three critical areas and make sure that they're working extremely well so that Kubernetes can remain stable.
So I mean, we know Kubernetes was born by hyperscalers for hyperscalers to solve some scaling requirements and needs. And today in the enterprise, and how VMware plays in this is to allow the enterprise to scale in those same ways. So we want VCF as a substrate to largely be that public cloud, but private and sovereign. Etsy plays a huge part in the ability to scale beyond a single system or a set of clustered systems, right? And I think some of the work we've done and some of the announcements we've put in performance and scale that today, I mean, it falls under there. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I think some of the key work that we've done has shown, which is a study that was run by a third-party company, shown significant improvements in our overall pod density compared to our competitors, and which is pretty killer. Like from an overall release and distribution perspective, but also showcases the value of virtualization and how you have the best of both worlds showing up when the Kubernetes is tied to virtualization.
Yeah, and I've seen reports where bare metal boundaries became an issue for things like etcd, right?
It causes challenges for nearly every aspect of Kubernetes, which is interesting. But I don't understand some of the reasoning and the rationale. But if you look at like the from a lifecycle perspective, like it's far greater or far easier, just like hyperscalers have done, to have distinct Kubernetes clusters for distinct purposes rather than combining a bunch of Kubernetes clusters all into separate namespaces. It's far easier to do lifecycle in that case, far easier to operate, far easier to give the self-service capabilities you want to give, and to have distinct fault domains. Where your Kubernetes clusters, you're not reliant on a very, very large
prod
Kubernetes.
are not the
Yes.
same thing.
Yes.
So, isolating out pods and isolating out namespaces, I guess it does make sense in some perspective. I know, silos is something, from a resource management we used to rant about, but I guess silos aren't just for farmers. But you've worked previously, with vSphere and the scheduler and DRS and some of our other resource technologies. How much has that come forward in terms of managing multiple Kubernetes pods and clusters together?
One of the key things that I actually still drive is DRS, HA, vMotion. Those are all in my team still, and for good reason, because they play such a critical role in that virtualization boundary between Kubernetes and the underlying VM abstraction. And so, we've actually worked, even in the initial go, in marrying the Kubernetes scheduler and our DRS scheduler in a deep way. We've worked, and we're going to continue to do so as time goes on, to be able to get the optimal placement for both the nodes, but in the future, maybe even for the pods.
It's interesting because I feel like that was often viewed by a lot of people as a solved problem. Like, you just distribute things, you shuffle it out, you look, you reshuffle it. But it sounds like, with hardware changes and with scale changes and stuff, it's a constant moving target.
It's actually even a further problem as we look at specialized hardware that's showing up, like GPUs. And GPUs make this critical challenge because you need to be able to allocate particular hardware devices to particular nodes in the Kubernetes cluster. And if you're allocating them up, this is why DRA has come up in the Kubernetes community, to make it easier to be able to allocate these resources up from the underlying host or underlying virtualization stack.
Kubernetes is well known for doing really great initial placement from a
Yes.
resource perspective. Doesn't do a great job throughout the life cycle of an application or a cluster. VMware, on the other hand, this is something that we've done for decades, right? This ongoing optimization and placement. I see pretty awesome opportunity for these things to come together.
And actually, a lot of it's already come together, and we already employ a number of those things. But again, as we move forward, further and further enhancements are possible.
All right, Dilpreet, so we can't have this conversation, especially with you, without going up the stack a little bit.
Sure.
So we've been talking about substrate, we've been talking about runtime, we've been talking about the work we've been doing in Kubernetes. A big passion of mine is automation, is the management. It's the thing that you have to have and implement to operate this beast, right?
Yep.
So as we go up the stack, what are we doing to make the lives of platform engineers better, the DevOps team and GitOps and all those things better? Can you give us a little bit of some insight there?
One of the main things that we did in this journey is converting all of our consumption APIs to Kubernetes. So now you have a simple desired state interface for VM consumption VKS consumption or Kubernetes consumption, consumption of all your fundamental resources, for persistent volumes or other things like databases with our database service and so on. And there's further and further capabilities, including our AI capabilities, like having a model runtime and a model repository. Those are all driven from this single Kubernetes, IaaS, if you will, and based on that, then you get all these great properties up at that top layer. Now, one of the things that we've been working on, and we're continuing to do so, is from the original TMC that was done for Tanzu Management Control. There was a number of work items that were done to be able to make sure multi-cluster management works well for platform admins. And what we've done is actually we've brought that into the automation space and allowed for platform engineers to now do multi-cluster management from a single automation interface.
Excellent. So we've seen a lot of that come to fruition, and coming from Tanzu back over into VCF also. I think our roadmap in that area specifically is pretty exciting as well. So thanks for that. You heard it here, folks. Day one of KubeCon. We've got a lot of exciting things that Dilpreet just shared with you. Do see the rest of the announcements on our VCF YouTube channel, and keep your ears open for several announcements this week and some excitement. Dilpreet, thanks again for joining us, and thanks for all the insights.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right.
And we're out.
Wow.